Hello, family, and welcome to Amazing Parents Network. I am the host of this show. My name is Ali Lankarani, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer. I'm a clinical neuroscientist, and I am very happy that you have taken the time to be here with us tonight. We have dozens of experts that are going to be presenting in the upcoming months. These are called the Family Education Series. Please invite your friends and family to come and benefit from the resources and the expertise that is going to be presented here. We're glad to have you here. We're glad to have our experts. Enjoy tonight's presenter. Thank you.
Okay, starting the video in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, family, and welcome to Amazing Parents Network. I am the host of this show. My name is Ali Lankarani, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer. I'm a clinical neuroscientist, and I am very happy that you have taken the time to be here with us tonight. We have dozens of experts that are going to be presenting in the upcoming months. These are called the Family Education Series. Please invite your friends and family to come and benefit from the resources and the expertise that is going to be presented here. We're glad to have you here. We're glad to have our experts. Enjoy tonight's presenter. Thank you.
Hello and welcome back, everybody. I am so glad you are here. I hope you and your vibrant family are doing wonderful this week. And I hope that every week that you are working with your children, thinking about your family and growing together, that you are becoming healthier, happier, and more successful in every single way. Over the last few weeks, we've been doing a lot of digging into what it looks like to become an empowered parent, to prepare yourself to take charge of your child's education. And over the last 3 weeks, we've dove deep into some really basic things, but some really important things as well. I am Kristian. I am your host for this show. And my company, Vibrant Family Education, is here to help families really become those empowered parents that do the best that they can for their children and for their family. I was a teacher for 27 years, and after the end of 27 years, I thought it's time for me to get back into doing what I really love more than anything else, not only teaching, but reaching families and working with families. Unfortunately, my dream job of 27 years had changed a lot, and I knew that it was time for me to reach out to parents individually, to families individually, instead of through the classroom setting that I had been in for so long. The last 2 years of my career were really an eye-opener for me. I spent the last 2 years in a online school, and it wasn't the COVID school. It wasn't the school that everybody was having to deal with that was online and up and down and all the different things that weren't quite working. This is a school that was inside my school district the whole time. It is the actual online school that still continues today for parents and families who need something a little bit different. These are for medically fragile children, children who are into high-end sports where they're traveling all the time, or maybe even behavior issue children who can't be in the classroom. So they are still getting their public education through this online model. During those 2 years, I realized that parents were so amazing and that our students are looking for a different kind of education in many, many circumstances. I was blessed to be able to work with parents to help create schedules, to help them become teachers of their children, to help support them and move through the school year in a different fashion than I had the 25 years previous when I was in the building. So it really opened my eyes, and I knew it was time for me to reach out to you, like I said. So that is what this is all about. Become an empowered parent. Preparing you to be your child's best educator is exactly what this series is about. We've gone through 3 weeks of the series, and during those 3 weeks, we cover topics like family values. Do you want your child's education based on your family values? What are your child's or what are your goals for your child's education? So thinking about, what do I really want them to get when we talk about education? And then that big word education, what is the meaning of that word? With us here at Vibrant Family Education, it's different. It's not just academics. When we speak education, we are asking about the whole child, or we're focusing on the whole child. We want to make sure that they are happy, healthy, and successful throughout their learning process, and then also into their future. Are they going to be able to leave school ready for the next part of their life? Are they going to have this basic skills to be available and know how to be successful in anything they do? And that's what we were talking about. Yes, thank you for being here today. We have a guest in the room, and I'm so glad you are here. The recordings for the first 3 sessions will be available as a whole package at the end of the recording in a couple of weeks. So make sure that you follow the links that you got to be in this room, and you'll be able to get access to all the recordings. So thank you very much for asking that question. All right, so we took a look at the family values and what you want to build your foundation on. We took a look at the goals for your child's education. What can you do to make sure that you're hitting those goals and those benchmarks for you and your family and your child? Then we went into learning styles. We talked about all the different learning styles that a child might have, and how many of us are a combination of those learning styles. And when we help educate our children, that we want to make sure that we're hitting those learning styles. So learning is fun, and learning is enjoyable, and it makes it sink in and stick with the child longer because they are having that fun and they're really connected to their learning. Okay. We also talked about sleep. How much sleep is needed for a successful learner? How much sleep do you and your child and your family need to make sure that their brain is ready and has also processed everything they learned the day before? It's amazing how much sleep they really need. And if they aren't getting enough sleep, guess what? That impacts mood and all sorts of different things. We also talked about learning to mastery. That is an issue in many of our public schools right now, is that students aren't required to learn to mastery before they move on to the next topic or the next layer of their learning. So for example, when you're learning addition and subtraction, you can learn addition and subtraction with 1-digit numbers, and then you have to learn with 2-digit numbers and 3-digit numbers. But guess what? Maybe for some reason, for those 2-digit numbers, it wasn't quite clicking. But they went through all the lessons in the lesson plan, and they know, oh, I have to be on this page, on this chapter, on this day. That's how many school districts are doing it now. And then they tried to teach them 3-digit addition. Well, because they missed that middle step, 3-digit addition doesn't come easy to them. So making sure that your child is learning to mastery instead of just following a schedule was something that we've also talked about in the last couple of weeks. We talked about how you as the parent are your child's first best teacher. You've been teaching them since the day they were born, even though you might not be sitting down and showing them flashcards or going through a workbook or doing something specific with them. They're learning from you every single day. They are learning from your actions, from your words, from the places you go and the events and the things that you do. So it's amazing how much they're already learning. Now, does that mean that you're going to know everything you need for the education of your child? Maybe not. But you have a good idea because you've looked at your family values. You've looked at your goals for them, and you are smart and brilliant and vibrant, and you know how to get help for the things that you don't quite know what to do with. And we've talked about, oh, I wasn't very good at school, so how could I be my child's teacher around academics? Well, guess what? Lots of times you still are, because you have your skills. You know how to ask for help. You know how to help get tutoring or co-ops or different things to help out if you choose to do the homeschool, the education at home. Through this series, though, I've really tried to make sure that I talk about what it looks like if you're just going to keep your child in public school and build around that education, or if you're maybe going to try to do a half and half where you do more learning outside of school and then keep them in school part-time, and that's something you have to work with your school district on. Or if you're going to take the full big bold step and start educating at home, which is what I call homeschooling. Okay. We've also talked about the last couple of weeks about the fear of socialization. If I do take that big bold step and decide to educate my child at home, will they be socialized properly? Will they be able to do all of the different things that people expect when they're out in public or communicating with others? And we talked a lot last week about how it's really amazing that our homeschool students, the people who have been through life in a little bit of a different way, a lot of them are coming out more confident than our public education students right now. Okay. I know if you're just joining me for the first time, I might have just thrown a lot of information at you, but hopefully you'll go back and pick up the whole series and hear my explanation around all of these things. Environment and habits and skills are super, super important when you're becoming an empowered parent, when you're becoming prepared to do education at home with your child. Now you might say, oh, this sounds like you want us to homeschool. Yeah, in the long run, I'm hoping a lot of families will become that empowered parent and take on that responsibility, but that joy and that adventure that you can have with your family if you choose to completely take them out of public school. But again, guess what? There's so much you can do building around the public school schedule, building around your family's schedule, and really making sure that you're giving your child a whole child education, emotional, mind, body, spirit, everything that your child needs to be happy, healthy, and successful. Over this series, I've also talked a lot about why this is so important to me. I was a teacher for 27 years. I have seen the ups and downs of the education system. I have seen the ins and outs of families in crisis, families who are joyful, families who are going through so many, many different things. And what I can tell you is that I have changed my perspective some on what it means to be a homeschool family. Also, so many technologies have come around that if you become a homeschool family now in this day and age, it's a lot different than what it was even up to 5 years ago. So take this deep breath and embrace this and say, I am going to be an empowered parent. I'm going to help my child get what they need so that they are healthy, happy, and successful when they're ready to take on the brave, new, big world out there. This week, we are diving into the legalities of what your school choices and what that kind of looks like. And then at the end, we'll also kind of look at curriculum. So this is leaning a little bit more towards education at home, but it also really informs parents about what they need to do if they're keeping their child in the regular public school as well. Now, we know that there are some absolutely wonderful schools out there, and there are schools that are a perfect fit for you and your child. But there are other schools and others that are not a perfect fit for you and your child. And what I'm saying is, as an empowered parent, it's your job to step up and say, hey, this isn't working for my family. This isn't working for my child. And what can I do about it? Just recently, I was doing a podcast interview with a parent, and she was kind of stuck. She wanted to homeschool her children, but at the same time, there was a family situation where that wasn't possible. They had to keep going to the public school. The way she approached that public school was like this: I trust you to do your job, and I'm going to continually check in and make sure that you are doing the best by my child. So what that looked like to her was that she always knew what subjects were being taught, when they were being taught. If there was an opt-out, if it was something that she didn't agree that her children should be taught at the public school, maybe she wanted to handle that topic at home instead. And then she would always go in and talk with either the principal if there was an issue or the teacher if there was an issue. She absolutely was connected with her students, with her children. And every day when they came home from school, it wasn't the grilling, what did you do and what did you learn? But instead they had that open communication about what they were learning, what they were hearing, and how that might fit into their family dynamics. So maybe the children heard something at school that wasn't quite the same as the family values. They would talk about it. And the children understood that mom was going to be there to back them up, to support them, and to make sure that they were getting what they needed. But also, she was keeping an eye on the teachers, the system, the principal. That's an empowered parent. That is a parent who knows what they want for their child's education, what they want for their family values, and how to make sure that that flows together as smoothly as possible when you don't have the option of taking them out of the public school and putting them in a private school or a charter school, or bringing them home for education at home. So let's take a look at this, okay? Right now in all 50 states, it is absolutely legal for you to educate your children at home, to homeschool your children. There are different rules and regulations, and there are 4 different layers of what we call homeschool across the 50 states. The first layer is the no notice and no regulation. There are a few states, and I believe these are accurate from my research, but of course, always check your state. Alaska, Connecticut, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Missouri, New Jersey, Oklahoma, and Texas have the no notice and low regulation homeschool approach. What does that mean? That means that when your children get to school age, you don't have to put them in school if you choose not to. You don't have to tell anybody that you're not putting them in school. And the state doesn't have any requirements around what you have to teach your child. They do expect children to be getting an education from the age of 7 to 18. And you have to make sure that you cover the subjects that are usually taught in school: reading, writing, math, history, science, right? But there is no requirement, no regulation from those states that you have to report anything, that you have to test at certain times, or that you have to, check in with anybody about your child's education. Now, some of you might be saying, whoa, wait a second. That sounds like the Wild West. That sounds like anything could be taught at any time. Well, guess what? You're not going to let that happen because you're an empowered parent. You know what is important, which is why we talked about family values. You know what you want your child to be able to achieve as they grow up. That's your education goals. And you are an incredible person, advocate for your student, and you know that you can find out the information that you think is really important for your child to learn as they're growing. Okay, so those are the no notice and low regulation states. Okay. If you're in another state that is a low regulation state, okay, and again, these are what I've seen recently, they might have changed. Always check in with your states, and I'll give you some more information and guidance around that soon. But Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, Montana, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Wisconsin, and Wyoming are considered low regulation states. Okay. What does that look like? That means that in these states, you choose the instructor of your child, ages 6 through 18, that is going to instruct your student. And most usually that is going to be you, but of course you can use other co-ops, other groups, tutors, etc., whatever you need to help fill in the gaps of the things that maybe you're not comfortable teaching, right? And then you have to only notify your local school and let them know that you're covering the core subjects and that you are taking care of their education. And sometimes you have to submit a test several times throughout their education career, right? And like I said, you'll contact your local school at this point. They will give you the guidelines on that, okay? One of the things that a lot of people are curious about or concerned about is like, well, if the homeschool kids aren't getting tested the same way that the public school kids are getting tested, How are they getting a proper education? Well, again, that's what this whole series is about. You're the empowered parent. You're the one who, I am pretty sure, wants your child reading well, wants your child being able to do the math that's required for a job or their future, being able to write properly, those kinds of things. You're not going to fail your students. You're going to make sure that they get what they need, and you're going to know how to access the resources that you need to make sure they're learning the things that you need to learn, or they need to learn, okay? The next level is called moderate regulation. And these are the ones that were most recently listed: Maine, Minnesota, New Hampshire, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oregon, South Carolina, Virginia, Washington, and West Virginia. Now, if you're talking about a moderate regulation for homeschool in these states, what that means is that you get to choose the instructor with proper qualifications. Now that gets a little bit tricky. What does it mean, proper qualifications? Again, your state would be able to tell you what that means, right? You have to notify your local school, or what's called an ESD, Educational Service District. Okay, I currently live in Oregon, and almost every single county has what's called an ESD, so the Education Service District, and they're the ones who do more of the homeschool liaison information than the regular school district. But your regular local school district will be able to point you in the right direction if you don't quite know what to do. All right. So, and in these states, they have to really make sure that you are hitting certain benchmarks in learning. So for example, like here in Oregon, they have to be tested at grades 3, 5, 8, 10, and they have to confirm that they have passed those tests. So it would be an independent tester who would test your child, you would get the results, and then you would have to turn them into the ESD to make sure that they're seeing growth and progress, right? If for some reason that your child wasn't making proper progress, then the ESD, because these are moderately regulated states, they could start saying, well, we need to see a little bit more of maybe your lesson plans, or we need to see a little bit more of how they're learning, right? We need to have them tested next year instead of in 2 years, because we need to see if they're growing. So they have a little bit more control, but still, there is still a lot less regulation, a lot less demand on what has to be taught in specific sequences and things than what the low regulation or the no regulation states are. So again, remember, what this is for people who are ready to take that big step. But you can use this information also if you're keeping your child in the regular public school, because then you know what ages they have to be in school and some of the resources that are set around, okay? Moderately regulated states, most of them have students who are in age 5 to 18. Some of them, like Oregon, is actually 6 to 18, and they do the testing based on if they enter school at 6 years old and they're in kindergarten, then they would be about 9 years old when they're in 3rd grade, and that's when they would have to be tested. So their age and their grade level is very, very correlated. Now, one of the things that I've noticed a lot with this is that because they have these stricter rules, right, age and grade is very much correlated. For many families who choose to educate at home, who choose to homeschool, they don't necessarily pay attention to grades, but instead that mastery to learning, like I was talking about, that I talked about a couple of sessions ago. So don't worry. Like I said, I will make sure that in the information that comes along with this curriculum course package will be some resources for you to check out. Then there is what's called the high regulation states. Now, these guys are a little bit trickier, right? You have to be careful here a little bit more. So Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont are what's called our high regulation states. In these states, you have to choose a qualified teacher. Now, again, it could still be a parent, but they might actually ask for some kind of teaching credential or someone with at least a bachelor's degree. They have different regulations on who the qualified teacher would be. So make sure you're checking in with that with that state, okay? They also make sure that you have to be ages 6 to 18. You have to be in school. You have to follow the state mandated subjects and time requirements. So many states, I don't know if you know this, public school, your children have to be at the school for a certain number of hours each year. There's a time requirement. So for like Oregon right now, we're in a little bit of a pickle because we had a whole week off because of snow. We don't usually have a week off of snow. So that pushes into the time requirement, and they could add extra days at the end of the school year to make up to meet that time requirement. Okay, so highly regulated states, a few more hoops to kind of jump through, a couple of more things to watch out for if you're educating at home. Okay, you have to file a learning plan with these states. Okay, and you also have to submit to usually annual testing. So where the moderate was only like certain grade levels, in these states, lots of times every year, your child has to go through some kind of progress testing to make sure that they're making growth. Okay, and all of this, guess what, is even a little bit different if you have a special needs child. Now, if you're sitting here listening to this going, whoa, okay, that's it. This is way too complicated. I know I can't do this now. Take a deep breath because you can. Think about your values. Think about your child. Who are you doing this for? You're for you and your family. And are you a intelligent person? Yes, you are, because you're here looking and listening and thinking about what's going to be best for my student. How can I help them flourish and grow? You also will know how to get the right kind of help. Okay, that's why I'm putting this series together, to let you know it's possible, that there's help out there. You don't have to go this alone. You know, homeschooling used to be kind of the wild, wild west. Everybody's like doing their own things and they weren't very coordinated and things like that. But like I said, COVID had a silver lining. It brought a lot more people together to support in community. I bet if you even go on your local Facebook right now, you will find a local chapter of homeschool co-op or parents in your area, in your neighborhood, or at least in your county or state. There's a lot more help out there than you really need. Remember that parent I said I was interviewing on the podcast at the beginning of this show? She said the exact same thing. She said, I was amazed when all I wanted to find out more about what people are doing outside of school and around school to support their child's learning, about how many places came up online when she typed in homeschool support, or homeschool co-op support, or parents supporting homeschool, any of those kinds of things. And then you get to have those information areas pop up. You get to check in with those people. And guess what? Many of those groups are so very welcoming. If your child is in the regular education, they still want your children to come play and engage and have fun with them, especially if they're doing weekend outings or something like that. If your child is in a charter school or a private school, a lot of these places are great places, as well as the dance and everything else. One thing I forgot to mention last week when we were talking about socialization and making sure that your child was able to get into all of the activities and things that you want them to be involved in, so they aren't the awkward or the shy child. Well, guess what? Many schools have it set up that homeschool kids can come in and participate in the after-school sports and activities. All you have to do is check it out, right? Or there are lots of independent leagues and independent teams now that we used to not have before. Lots of opportunities. And of course, if your child is into music, there's tons of music lessons. There's tons of dance lessons. There's lots of different things that's available for you and your student as you're embarking on this journey to make sure that they become the whole child, the whole emotional child that is able to handle so much. Here is that one of those resources I told you about. It is HSLDA. hslda.com, Homeschool Legal Defense Association. They are where I got most of this information that I talked about the different regulations and the different layers of regulation for the different states. They are a full source of information about homeschool and legal needs, and they also are there to help protect members, right? So maybe you got a letter from the school district saying, yeah, we need more attendance reports, or we need this, or they're trying to tell you something a little bit different about your homeschool program than what you believe is accurate. They can help you get the information, and they can help respond to those legal inquiries, things like that. So the HSLDA is a great resource. And of course, if you come work with someone like me, I do research, I help, we navigate those kinds of things together as you're choosing the best sources for you and your child. What we're going to jump into next is curriculum. Now, we have talked about how when you do homeschool or education at home, or even just being the empowered parent, how you want to do things a little bit different from your child, for your child, right? So let's jump into curriculum. The first people I want to talk to are all of those who are like, there's no way. I work 2 jobs. My kids have to be in school. I don't have time to do this on my own. They need to be there. But I want to do something around the regular school day. I want to do something on the weekends to help develop my child in a little bit different way, a way to help them connect into their emotions, to connect into who they are and what they're passionate about. For you, I want you to know there are so many amazing extracurricular programs depending on your child's wants and needs. A lot of people I talk with are entrepreneurs. They're small business entrepreneur families, and they know that it's super important that students get financial literacy, that they understand about checking and savings and investing and things like that. There are a lot of programs popping up out there that get to let you have fun with your child and talk about these financial things from when they're young. So they start learning these words and understanding these words and how to budget and things like that. So there are those kinds of programs that you can build in around your child's regular education that will make sure that they have the skills they need and the habits they need for when they get out of school and are ready to be on their own. One of those programs is called Junior Achievement. Absolutely love that program as a teacher in the classroom, because they would come in and help me teach those kinds of classes or topics to my students when it wasn't regular curriculum. I got to bring them in as guests, and that's when I had a little bit more flexibility in what I could teach in my own classroom. But then there's also entrepreneur schools. There are a lot of programs out there now who have kids come on the weekends and talk about building businesses and starting businesses and following their passion. For all of our music moms and dads, right? Your children are into music. You know, there's all those music programs and things out there for you. Art classes, dance classes, all of those things are available. So that's how you build around your child's regular education with the things that you know that will help them be successful. Cooking classes. We don't want our students not knowing how to cook when they get out on their own. We want them to be able to cook good, nutritious, healthy, wholesome meals for them and their future families, hopefully, right? Exactly. So cooking classes is another thing. If your child is into cars, there's car clubs out there. There are places out there that will help teach kids about cars and mechanics and things like that as well. So that's how you augment. That's the curriculum that you put in around your child's regular education. If they have to go to public school, you don't have a choice about that, but you want them to learn other good, healthy, wholesome skills. Okay. I have a couple of guests on here with me. So guests, if you are resonating with any of this, if this is sounding good, if it's making sense to you, I don't mind questions in the chat or comments in the chat as you are listening along. Now I'm going to move away from the public education kiddos to our private school and our charter school kids. Now, if you're in a charter school, at least in Oregon, the way that works is that sometimes you get more choices over the child's curriculum than the regular public school, but they really support that. And they have teachers that can also work beside you to help support your child through their education process, right? So charter schools and private schools. So a lot of the education is done. Okay. So that's them. And again, you augment around those things like we did with the regular public school. Thank you, Sheila. I appreciate that comment. Yes, absolutely. I love sharing this information. And then also for those charter school, private school kiddos, there's lots of opportunities. Like I said, if you want them still connected with the regular public school or their neighborhood schools, things like that, then you can go to your regular public school and say, hey, I'm in this school, but I want my child to be able to come over for this sport or this choir or this theater, those kinds of things. So make sure you take advantage of those opportunities. And don't forget your regular programs are out there. Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, there's religious groups that teach all sorts of amazing skills to our young people. And it allows them to be with other people that are like-minded. That is one of the things I talked about last week that I think is so, so important that I'm going to mention again this week. When we were talking about socialization, when we were talking about helping our children become the confident people that they want to be, unfortunately, lots of times our schools, as we've seen on the news and stuff lately, isn't the best place for them. So what do you want your child, how do you want your child to be socialized? How do you want them to be able to be in the world? Well, if you take them to something where they are with like-minded students and like-minded people, like dance classes, like robotics classes, things like that, you have a lot less chance of them being bullied, teased, etc., because they're with like-minded kids, okay? So think about that. How can you augment your child's learning around those kinds of things, okay? Perfect. So let's jump. I was trying to talk about curriculum. I was trying to go to, the public schools where you don't have choice over curriculum, except for opting out of things that you don't want your child to be taught through the public school. Be an empowered parent. Opt them out if they're teaching something that you don't quite agree with. You have that right. You are their parent, and they have to give you the schedule, right? Okay. So public school, their curriculum, etc., right? Opt out, augment, help. Charter school, private school, same thing. They have certain things they have to teach, but opt out if you have to, augment, etc., create. Now, let's talk about if you are taking that big, bold step. You're ready to become the empowered parent and do education at home or homeschool. I love the word education at home because remember our definition of education is the whole child, body, mind, spirit, how to make them happy, healthy, successful into the future. So some of the words that you might know or have heard about on homeschooling curriculum is like school at home. People who do homeschool in the school at home model, basically exactly that. They go find the curriculum that the public school is going to teach. They find a similar workbook, textbooks, etc. They bring it home. You're sitting down at the table or you're sitting down at a little desk and you're basically recreating school at home. You do PE, music, whatever you want to do at your school at home, right? But you're basically recreating school. That is one way to do it. Unfortunately, that has the most expensive way to do it and the highest burnout because it's not super exciting when you're sitting there all by yourself or just two kids in a room, right? Instead, I'm hoping you'll kind of branch out as you're becoming this empowered parent. Now, I'm not saying don't rely on those things to help you when you're stuck or when you need ideas about what to teach, right? But hopefully you'll branch into one of these other models. Another model that you might be called to try was the relaxed or eclectic model, right? And that just means that the parent knows what they want to teach. They know what's important. They know their family values, and they just kind of pick and choose. They go find different things from different areas, right? The eclectic or relaxed model of homeschooling. Then there is a model called the Charlotte Mason, okay, and that is another really big popular model. And in Charlotte Mason, it's based a lot, especially when they're younger, on playing, creating, visiting nature, visiting museums, and the focus of the learning is from the child lots of times. And instead of testing the child on standardized kinds of tests, they show their progress by narrating or discussing or talking about what they've been learning. So that's the Charlotte Mason style. A classical homeschool style with roots all the way back to the Middle Ages of homeschool is based around 5 tools of learning and focuses on more of why something happened instead of the specifics of specifics of what happened. An example of that would be like World War II. You teach about World War II and you talk to your child. Of course, this is probably middle school, high school, right? A little bit older topic, but you talk to them about how the different countries were feeling and why the interactions were happening. And so they come away with more of a sense of why World War II happened instead of specifics. Oh, there was this battle on this state, there was this battle in this country, this many people passed away, all those, specific things. So that's more of the classical homeschool goal, where they're looking more at the whys instead of the specific dates and things like that. So instead of memorizing a whole bunch of things for a test and then forgetting, they're able to internalize and think about how that might impact them and their world. Waldorf homeschool is another. One of our guests here today, she said that her children are in, a Montessori. That is another way, exactly, to homeschool. Exactly. And then another one is the multiple intelligences. So multiple intelligences is the learning styles I talked about in last session. No, sorry, 2 sessions ago. And we talked about how when students learn, if they're learning based off of their learning style, then they absorb the information easier. It's not as much of a struggle, and that many of our students are combined intelligences. So we talk about the kinesthetic learner who likes to be the hands-on person, and we talk about the audio-visual learner and how they like to listen to things as they're learning, and how a lot of us are combinations of that, or we can learn kind of like 2 or 3 different ways. Okay. Now, does that mean to only teach in that one style? No, because you always want to challenge your student and stretch your student, but at the same time, you don't do it all the time, because then they're losing out on learning because they're struggling against the process instead. I hope that kind of makes sense. You can also do what's called unit study homeschooling, where you pick a topic and all of the learning, the reading, the writing, the math, everything is around a certain topic. An example of that is a student I worked with just last week. They love the red-tailed hawk. All the kiddo could talk about was the red-tailed hawk. And I was like, okay, well, we have to get reading done. We have to get math done. What can we do around the red-tailed hawk? So basically, we did kind of a research report about the red-tailed hawk. And so we practiced our reading by reading kid-friendly language around the red-tailed hawk. Then we did math because we took the numbers that were in there. Well, red-tailed hawks can be an average of like 43 inches to 57 inches. Well, guess what? We practiced subtracting. We subtracted those numbers and found out other sizes that they could be, or the difference between the sizes, right? So we incorporated his math, incorporated his reading around that red-tailed hawk. So you can get more elaborate with that and try to do units of study as homeschooling, okay? Then there's what's called unschooling, and that means a lot of things to a lot of different people, but unschooling for most people means that they don't use a prepackaged curriculum. Instead, they are learning more like an adult does, through videos, through reading books, through life experiences, things like that. So unschooling is another way to homeschool, okay? Another great thing that's come out of COVID is a bunch of online schools, right? So if you aren't sure about picking the curriculum, but you still want to homeschool your child, there are a bunch of online schools now that allow you to use their curriculum, check in with support people if you need it, but you're in charge, right? You're helping your child learn when it's best for them. You're looking at the lessons and knowing what's being taught ahead of time, things like that. Part of Vibrant Family, which is what I do, is along those lines. We help you choose curriculum. And then because I have 27 years of teaching experience, I support families when they get stuck through that teaching. And if need be, I go in and I work with the students and I help them through those stuck parts or different times to give the parents the support that they need as they're going through and becoming the empowered parent and choosing the best education for their child. The last thing we want to talk about today, before we wrap up, is what's called deschooling. If you're going to make this change, you've decided, I'm the empowered parent, I want to make sure my child is getting the absolute best education they can. I'm going to go look for it, I'm going to find it, and I'm taking them out of public school and we're putting them into homeschool. Before you do that, take a little break and do what's called deschooling. Deschooling is where you take a month or so, and this is really for you, the parent mostly, right? Is to make sure that you have everything in place that you want to get done and set up, and you know where you're going to teach from and things like that. You're getting the help that you need. But it also helps your family get kind of into a rhythm and a rhyme. When I was talking about learning styles and sleep patterns and things in a previous session, I talked about how families get into kind of a rhythm, a routine. It feels kind of comfortable. When you're deschooling, you're kind of turning off alarm clocks a little bit. You're letting bodies regulate to when you wake up a little bit more naturally, and you're eating when it's a little bit more naturally, and you're relaxing your brain and staying away from electronics a little bit more, and just really getting into a rhythm and a flow. Because then you know when is your optimal teaching time to the children that you're working with. One of the biggest, most beautiful things about education at home is the flexibility and how you can weave it around regular life and your child's natural learning times. For example, I had a student that I was working with during the COVID school time, and she got up every morning. She was wide awake at 6 o'clock in the morning. I was not teaching at 6 o'clock in the morning, right? That's not normal school time. Well, she would get up, she would do all of her lessons, and then her mom would have her check in with me, and then they would take off for the rest of the day doing science lessons, music lessons, nature walks, whatever it was. So her natural rhythm and routine led her into this kind of learning style, right? And guess what? They are a complete homeschool family now. I just heard from them recently, and they have taken it completely. They're like, we're done. We know how to do this. We know what our child needs. And they took off and they're completely homeschooling now. So it can be done. So deschooling is super important. Give yourself some grace and time to adjust. Give your child some grace and time to adjust, and then start tiptoeing into schooling. A lot of families are like, oh no, they're going to get so far behind if I take a month off of school and they will never catch up. Remember, they're actually probably going to catch up and surpass what they needed to do because they're more focused when it's learning time. They're more relaxed and can absorb more. So please take some time to deschool as you're making these transitions. All right. So I know I covered a lot of information today about what the different regulations are at different states, and then what some common curriculum ideas are about how to homeschool or educate at home. And just know that as you're becoming more and more empowered in this education goal, this plan for you and your students, you'll find your rhythm, you'll find your rhyme, and there are people out there to help you along the way. I'm going to pause for just a second and read the rest of Sheila's note here to me. Thank you so much for popping that in there. Yeah, kids are 9 and 12 in a Montessori school for the last 4 years, and she wants to explore some more options. Perfect. Yeah. Researching homeschool experiences is an amazing idea, and you're on the right track. You're already doing what's best for them by having them in a Montessori school, but let's get together. So the way that you do that, as we're wrapping up today, my invitation at the end of each session is to come join me. Find me over on Facebook, Christina Heigh Avritt, or type in www.vibrantfamily.com and you'll be able to find me and my company. You'll be able to reach out to me. We'll be able to have a discussion. So as always, I invite people, as you're finding out more, you're becoming an empowered parent, visit www.vibrantfamilyeducation.com. There's a free ebook there with some ideas in it. There is a way to contact me for some questions and information. And until next time, I hope that you and your family are vibrant, are full of life, and making the best choices for you and your family each and every day. 2 more sessions. I will see you back here next week, where we'll have some more conversations about what this looks like becoming an empowered parent, and then the week after that as well. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.